Welcome to today's episode of Unapologetic Living. I'm super excited to get to share space with Dr. Bradley Campbell again. Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Elizabeth. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, good. The last time we talked, I was hosting a summit on Lyme specific therapies and treatments, and that episode or that interview is still available on my YouTube channel. But I know that you are a holistic doctor and doctor of chiropractor, and you look at things through that lens as well as a functional medicine lens. And I'm excited to have you here to talk about, I don't know if we call it the fertility or infertility crisis.
Yeah, it's a major problem right now, and it's only getting worse. And it's not just women, it's men and women. And there's a lot of reasons why, but a lot of experts estimate that the kids now and young people today, like if the sperm counts keep going the way they're doing, I think by 2045, the sperm count would be 0 if it keeps declining at the exact same rate. Now, it's probably not going to happen. It'll probably just keep cutting in half or keep getting worse if we keep poisoning ourselves more, but it's not looking good. Men's testosterone is about a third of where it was for our grandparents, and 10% of women have endometriosis, another 10% of women have PCOS, 10% of women get a thyroid condition in their lifetimes. So we're reaching about, and 50% of our country is mentally unwell, and the average American in America is on 4 to 7 different medications a year. Most of those impact fertility, especially the anti-psychiatric medications. So we have a huge problem from being like over medicated. The soil's depleted. We have lots of different toxins, like you were talking about. There's an article that's been going around and research showing that everybody is loaded with microplastics in male testes and in women's umbilical cords. The babies' umbilical cords have, dozens more chemicals than they have versus 50 years ago. There used to be about a dozen different chemicals you could test for in umbilical cords between a mother to the fetus or the baby. Now there's hundreds of chemicals getting passed. So we're really just in a health crisis. And because hormones and fertility are kind of the canary in the coal mine, that's where people are starting to really notice it first.
And so when aside from, getting the labeled diagnosis, what types of, symptoms do people show up with where they start to even question their, I don't know, reproductive health?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main things is if you need a drug to feel okay, that's the main symptom I have for anyone, whether it's like adrenal or thyroid issues or fertility issues. If you have low mojo, low libido, low drive, lack of interest in sexual partners, or if you're questioning your own sexuality, that's a good sign that your testosterone and estrogen are probably not appropriately balanced for your specific sex. And of course, there are people who are not heterosexual, and that can impact hormones, but we're going to kind of like separate that for a different conversation or kind of leave that out of this. But for people who are heterosexual generally, it would be lack of interest in the opposite sex when they previously didn't. And unfortunately, that used to happen through menopause. Now it's happening to kids even in teenage years, in their 20s. There's less and less people who are younger who are wanting to even date at all, or even like kiss or make out or hook up. Hookup culture used to be very big even in the 90s, and it's decreased a lot just because of lack of libido. And so one of the biggest things is if you need drugs to operate normally or to get a libido, or there's even 25-year-olds going on erectile dysfunction medications now. That's a big red flag. If you need caffeine to wake up and energize in the morning, or you need alcohol or marijuana to go to bed at night, that's a big red flag. If you need birth control pills or an IUD to regulate your hormones or period, that's a huge problem. It's like just if your car was to have a blinking red light on it and your engine started smoking, and that's the equivalent of getting an abnormal cycle or not getting a cycle, or heavy painful periods or lots of inflammation. And rather than address the flame and the heat and the fire inside of your body and your car engine being on fire, it's like just turning off the engine light. We're going to say, like, we're going to put an IUD in or take some birth control, maybe give some progesterone. And rather than look under the hood and see what's going on, we're just kind of prescribing a quick fix medication that then makes people feel normal or just stops the period from happening. and saying the problem's gone because the symptoms are gone. And that's the biggest lie in healthcare, is just because you feel fine means you're healthy. But you can't feel cancer until it's too late. You can't feel plaque building in your arteries. You can't feel the microplastics building up inside of your body. So we have to dive a little deeper under the hood and do a real thorough check of what's going on with someone's health these days.
Yeah, I didn't know I had endometriosis until, I mean, I have two healthy adult children now, but I did have my babies relatively young. I don't want to say, I mean, honestly now almost maybe ideal time, right? 23 and 27, which so many people are waiting to have babies later. But yeah, in my 2011, I'm 46. Whenever that was that like 13 years ago? So I was like 33, maybe. I
Yeah.
did have an ectopic pregnancy. And I don't know if it was due to the endometriosis in particular, but that's when I first learned that I had it at all.
Mm,
And I want to say they labeled it a level one. I don't stage one, it was mild. However, uh, as you said, that's not something that they can even see. And I didn't, I felt probably fine enough
yep.
that, and I'd had two babies,
Yep.
that I didn't really think too much, about it. And I definitely, I don't ever really remember my periods being overly irregular. They were always around 28 to 30 days, so I wouldn't have known.
Right. Interesting.
And it's hard to know, because I feel like I've been on this journey, since my kids were born, actually. We got rid of all the toxic chemicals. And as far as the cleaning go, all the things, like I've done all the things. And
Yeah.
it's still, right? So, but I do have MTHFR, right?
Right.
So, but I didn't know that until like the last 5 or 7 years. And so you don't always know, even if you're doing all the things right, right? We are still, our bodies are so overburdened.
Yeah. It's true. Um, Did you have any like painful periods or cramps or anything like that? Or
No, that's the thing.
no?
Like, I really don't recall. Like, I have not been one of those people who have been bent over in half, couldn't function,
Mm-hmm.
actually, you know what? I take that back a little bit. Day one is pretty tough, but I could still go and do my thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
But,
Um,
again, I don't know if that's excess estrogen. I do know, like, my mother had estrogen dominant breast cancer when she was 35 and 37. I do tend to have excess estrogen.
mhm.
And so, I know excess estrogen and estrogen dominance is a very prevalent thing today as well.
Yes. Yeah, it is. So it definitely can be related to excess estrogen that can cause the endometrial tissue to grow. And that can happen because of something like having an MTHFR gene variation. So you don't detox as well. So then that slows down phase two of the liver, which is part of how estrogen gets cleared and detoxified from the body. So it could be related to that. But you're right, not everybody has symptoms. A lot of people are walking around with abnormal adrenal, thyroid, hormone function, uterus, ovary function, and they generally feel fine most of the time, which is why it's tricky. And we'll use the phrase, if you're not testing, you're guessing. It's good to test your body or do some imaging scans especially if you're struggling with fertility. You probably want to find a fertility doctor to do some tests for your ovarian reserve and for hormone function, especially for the men. A lot of times, like the blame in America for sure gets put on the woman and like it's all about her. But the majority of couples who are not able to conceive, 60 to 80% of the time, the male has abnormal sperm. So the
Mm.
motility or the count or the morphology, how they look, are abnormal. So we can't ignore taking the men in to see how their sperm are doing and how their health is doing as well.
Yeah, I did recently have a show where I was talking to a nurse practitioner down in Alabama, and she also spoke of that. How oftentimes, it's the woman going in. She's already so in touch with her hormones, right? Monthly, cyclically, that she is naturally going in more often for something if things are off. right? Whereas men are not, unless, maybe they're struggling with something like erectile dysfunction and things aren't work, they know libido's lowered and they don't like that or what have you. And then some probably don't go at all, right? Because they don't want to even really address that. But that there is an increase in the sperm count and the motility and the quality of that sperm.
Yeah, yeah, there's major issues. And that either stems typically from toxins that people are putting on underneath their body. It stems from adrenal fatigue. Like burnout is the new ICD-10 term that finally gives like a real conventional diagnosis to adrenal fatigue. Or it's going to stem on rare occasion from EMF exposure, because I've had a couple patients with low sperm count and they moved the cell phone out of their pocket, which is right next to their testes, and either testicular pain went away or their sperm count jumped up within a few weeks. So I think we have to be careful of even like the heat and exposure from the phones. And another secret one is actually changing the type of underwear. So polyester is put on mice. They put polyester diapers on male mice to make them infertile, to get rid of their sperm count. And the friction of like the testes and the skin on the polyester heats up the testes, and it's like going in a hot tub. It basically will lower or reduce sperm count. So for men, you have to be really careful if you're trying to conceive that the clothing you have ideally is all cotton or cotton and organic as well.
Yeah, more recently I bought some organic cotton, and that's, so often I typically buy thrift. I thrift simply because organic can be very expensive. And when I do find my cottons, like dresses or what have you, I don't buy underwear there, but it's outgassed already, right? Because it's been worn and sometimes maybe for years before I get it. And that's the way I tend, but I've found a really great organic cotton, underwear and like little tank top set, because I'm moving more away from a regular bra. I'm not sure really like how that regular bra, I definitely got rid of the underwire 25 years ago.
Nice.
But that it can to me even feel a little bit rather restrictive. And and sometimes I wonder even how healthy it is to confine our breasts in these really tight sports bras all the time, right? Right there
Right.
along the lymphatic passage. Just
Oh
so
yeah.
many things are taking place that we don't even really think about. But I definitely have thought about underwear, because I think I heard years ago, well, you should be wearing boxers, right? Not this tight, briefy stuff.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. That is it. It just keeps the testicles too close to the body, I guess, maybe tucked up.
Yep. Yeah, the compression is not great. They need to be freed, move a little bit, get air. They need to be cooled down from the body, which is why they're outside the body, is because the lower temperature helps sperm to grow and stay healthy.
So, I think about like all these compression shorts that these guys are wearing underneath, right? They're athletic shorts.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, not good. And even like we won't have people work out super hard with like heavy squats or bike rides too, because when we do blood work and check for a prostate antigen, that increases the PSA if they've exercised really hard within 12 to 24 hours before the blood draw. So there's some of these things that are fun to do, but we have to be careful not to overdo it.
so now what now so when it comes to squats, is that a healthy way to boost testosterone levels?
It is. Yeah. So squats will definitely boost it. If you're doing like max weight, super heavy lifting, it can be a little hard on the pelvic floor and the prostate there. So it has like a funny effect. It'll increase PSA in some people, but it'll definitely up testosterone quite a bit. So squatting, I would not say to avoid squatting or bike riding, but if you're worried specifically about your prostate, you might want to take 24 hours off before getting your testosterone and PSA level checked to see where your baseline is a little bit more.
So aside from like the compression shorts, what other and you mentioned toxins, and I know that a lot of people, like you also mentioned cyclists, right? They're using that squeeze bottle, right? You
Yes.
see a lot of these athletic bottles that are plastic, and
Yep.
obviously our plastic water bottles. I would assume that any Gatorade bottle,
You could switch to like a hydro flask or a Yeti or something that's either like stainless steel that's shown to have no lead. Most of them don't have lead, but you switch to like a stainless steel, a glass, or you can use like a mason jar. Pretty easy to find used mason jars for cheap, but it's either got to be glass or metal or like wood or ceramic. It's like a lead-free ceramic of some sort. So kind of go old school. Plastic can be okay, but there's BPA free because a lot of people know BPA is bad, but a lot of the BPS and BPA free alternatives are actually twice as bad as the BPA is. So you have to be careful. If you are going to go with plastic, you want something that's not as squishy. So like those really crinkly water bottles you get for like super cheap from, the store, those are not going to be as good. I'm actually drinking the smoothie by Remedy Organics right now. That's like a little bit squishy. You can compress it, but that's still not ideal. If you get something that's harder, the less compression it has, the less you can kind of like squeeze and indent it, generally the better. The hard plastics don't leach as much. And if you avoid freezing things in it or extreme temperatures of hot and cold, that also helps because extreme heat and extreme cold will make more microplastics leak out of those things as well.
So you see clients for fertility issues or infertility. I don't know what it is, right? I mean, it could be called either thing really, right? Because the issue and obstacle is infertility, but
It is. Yeah, I see people all the time for fertility because it's such a big issue now. It's a lot of people's main reason why they come in is because they're maybe 40, 44, and they have good ovary reserve, but they can't seem to get pregnant for some reason.
so okay, so then how would you treat? How do you work with those clients?
So I run all the tests I can, like inflammatory tests, hormone tests, sometimes some estrogen fractions with a Dutch test, which is dried urine testing. We'll do some circadian rhythm checks, make sure that their sleep is regulated. We really look at the whole person and see if they even have space for a child, which is the biggest roadblock I find in people is they're trying to have a child, but the husband and wife also are working two full-time jobs and they're stressed to the max, or they have family issues, they're taking care of their aging parents, and they just don't have space for a child. So one of the best pieces of advice I could give people is make sure that you either have space in your life for a child because they will take up a lot of time when they're a newborn, or make sure that you set up your life and you have a future plan in your mind ready to go of like if you have a newborn, how are you going to adjust, how are you going to shift, how are you going to be able to make space. um, I have a friend I was just talking to this morning where she was a naturopathic doctor doing everything right. Her hormone levels were even almost totally regulated. Her husband's sperm motility morphology was all great. And they were doing everything like you should do. They weren't seemingly that stressed out. But for her secret was she got a horse and she found out that she was actually way more stressed out than she thought she was because the horse wouldn't, they basically reflect back to you how you're doing. So when your cortisol is a little high or you're a little bit stressed or anxious, for her main stress was just getting pregnant. She was so concerned and hyper focused on like how to get pregnant that when she was able to actually like bond with the horse by calming herself down and regulating to the horse, that helped calm her nervous system down so the cortisol could go down. Her periods were a little more optimal and the eggs are able to release. It's like when you're running from a bear, there's no reason to slow down and make love to your partner because you're running from a bear. And for some people, running from the bear is debt. For some people, running from the bear is taking care of their parents. For some people, it's their job. And for her, it just happened to be the challenge of fertility. And I see that a lot with people who have been on the fertility journey for a while, is they're so focused on the stress of getting pregnant and doing the right thing, getting the hormones optimized. What do I eat? How do I detox? Making sure they get their right morning routine and everything in perfectly, rather than switching into what really helps, which is sort of just letting go and trusting in the innate intelligence of their body. That's the biggest shift that I find in patients, which is always, always step number one.
It makes me think about those couples who try and try and try, and then decide, okay, we're giving up. We're going to adopt. And I have a couple that can think of in my mind from years ago when I was pregnant. They, you know, I followed their journey for a minute. And then when they went to Russia to adopt their first child, while in Russia, they found out they were pregnant, right?
Yep.
They let go of all the stress of trying to conceive. And then they had 3 more kids,
Wow.
biological children, because they let go of this thing that they, wanted so bad, but in and of itself could be a
Yep.
stressor.
For sure. Yeah, you really can't force a soul to come onto the planet, whatever your spiritual beliefs are. It's like it's gotta come of its own accord. And I do think everybody has those stories of someone who is trying forever. Maybe I've even had people who are missing both fallopian tubes. Like they were born without fallopian tubes. There's nothing to get the egg from the ovary to the uterus, and they give up. And sure enough, they have a kid. And you're like, I don't know how it got there, but here it is.
You've really heard stories like that? I've never heard of
Oh
that.
yeah. I've had patients without fallopian tubes, either born that way or surgically, and somehow they still get pregnant.
Wow.
There's like an electrical charge. They think that there's an electrical charge gradient or some subtle light photons from the uterus. So like the egg somehow knows intelligently to navigate itself from the ovary to the uterus, even despite having tubes to get there.
Wow. So, speaking of the uterus, I more recently was listening to another podcast with a woman who does Arvigo therapy. It's sort of an abdominal massage to help, uterine placement.
Yep.
And in listening to that podcast, she talked about even placement of the uterus and the wearing of high heels
Mhm.
can tilt that uterus in the wrong position, making it more challenging for, you know,
Totally. For
implantation,
fertility.
fertilization, for everything to get where it needs to go.
Yep, that's definitely a factor. I do a very similar type of pelvic abdominal massage to release scar tissue and adhesion, bring blood flow, because a lot of times birth control, IUDs, they'll create some scar tissue. Old C-sections or pregnancies, sometimes and miscarriages can do that as well. Different surgeries, hernia repairs, et cetera, can affect that. So even treating endometriosis is very helpful with abdominal massage. But it's true, the uterus can kind of fold forward, almost like bend like a hook when it should be more straight or just like a slight bend. It can overly bend, and then that can create less physical space for a baby to implant and develop, and just cause less blood flow to get to the uterus as well, which is needed to nourish the endometrial tissue and help with the whole hormonal cycling. So there's really a lot of factors. I still recommend people who have been struggling for more than 6 or 12 months to go to a fertility doctor generally to have different hormones checked, to look at their egg reserve, to do some imaging to see if there's anything going on there. Because it can be expensive to see a holistic practitioner sometimes. You can do a lot of things for free on your own. But if you're going to spend a couple $1,000s to have like a full workup or to do 6 to 12 months of care, I think it's appropriate sometimes to go, if people have medical insurance, to kind of go through the traditional model, look for some different things, look at some autoimmune blood clotting factors, look at some other platelet disorders, look for anemia, look for thyroid disorders. You can do a full thyroid panel with most doctors these days, just beyond TSH, and look for free T3, free T4, anti-TPO, anti-thyroglobulin, reverse T3. So you can look at some of those other factors and start to at least screen yourself for like, hey, are all the parts there? Are they working? Check out the male's sperm and morphology and count and motility. Because you don't really want to get like a year or two into doing the natural thing and then be like, oh, I actually don't even have ovaries, or I have this huge like fibroid on my uterus that's causing a major issue. And as much as you can feel with your hands through those massages, sometimes the endometrial tissue or there's endometriosis that's growing outside the uterus, that can be there and you can't find that without imaging, and it can even be hard to find in imaging, or there could be a slight fibroid that's getting in the way that you can't really find with just a hands-on exam.
Now, talk to me a little bit about PCOS. I really don't know that much about it. I do know that I have read that it is uh, an obstacle and challenge for those who are trying to get pregnant. I don't know, what an upstream cause of PCOS is. I personally don't. But I do know clients who's, well, they're older clients, but it's their kids, their daughters that are affected. And it has, made it more challenging for them to conceive and get pregnant.
For sure. So PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome, is just a syndrome. It doesn't tell you why it happens. It's just a collection of symptoms. So it's kind of a bit of a garbage can diagnosis because it doesn't tell you what caused it or what to do to fix it. But it does have a constellation of issues, and typically they relate to high testosterone or pre-testosterone, which is called DHEAS. So you can usually find high DHEAS over 250, or you can find higher testosterone in women over 40. That's one part, is like the high androgens or male hormones, and you can see that on the skin as more like whiskers or mustache forming, like that they have to pluck or remove in some way, or some people leave it. But you get darker, more arm hair, basically more male pattern hair growth is one thing you can tell for sure in people. And these women tend to often be a little bit more masculine in personality, in temperament, and physical physique as well. So you get the high androgens. You also get a liver pattern that relates with insulin resistance and blood sugar handling. So either high or low, hyper or hypoglycemia patterns. So one of them doesn't happen with every woman with this PCOS syndrome, but you basically have to treat and work on liver and blood sugar metabolism and insulin regulation. You have to work on the androgen balance. And then there's also sometimes cysts on the ovaries, which most of the time doctors won't diagnose it without the cysts on the ovaries and one of those other two factors, either the insulin resistance or the high androgens coming up on blood testing. So like a fasting insulin over 10 or 20 would be indicative of that. There might be high triglycerides or liver enzymes, or functionally hypoglycemia trends, or even a high hemoglobin A1C over 5.6, or some sort of pre-diabetes or diabetes condition going on as well. But the reason why PCOS typically happens is multifactorial. I believe in general, women are becoming a little more masculine and taking over masculine roles from a social cultural perspective, which doesn't help. I think the high drive, high achieving, high like super boss babe career woman vibe is a little bit intense. And just being go all the time is not really biologically how women are designed to function, because generally when you ovulate, you have more energy, and when you're working out, you usually have a lot more physical strength. And when it's the phase of the menstrual cycle, usually it's more of a rest down type of period of time. So if you constantly have to push through 1 week basically of life of every 4 weeks, like if 1 out of 4 weeks or 25% of your life you're like overexerting or over pushing or over driving, that can cause some issues. So I think part of it is the over masculization. Part of it is going to be all the endocrine disruptors. A lot of topical face creams, makeups, cosmetics, lotions, and potions and things are quite toxic. A lot of them have hormones in them. They have different estrogen or testosterone in them. Part of that is because it helps the skin plump and look fresher and younger, but they're endocrine disruptors. They also do not have to list the actual ingredients in cosmetics. So cosmetics are not like, and food now don't have to list every ingredient that's on it. They can have something be proprietary, or if it's in a low enough dose, you don't have to see it on there. And even though they are required to label some things, there's a lot that gets in there that's not detected or found unless an independent lab searches for it. Even then, a lot of the chemicals that are in cosmetics that are approved and allowed by the FDA are either not allowed in other countries or are still toxic. You can look them up on ewg.org. You can look up different cosmetics or hair products or things that you're putting on and all over your body. Things like perfume is classic for having tons of endocrine disruptors in it. So you really have to be careful what you're putting in your, not just in your mouth, but on your skin as well.
Yeah, I know that was, I don't know if that was one of the first things I remember reading. again, years ago. I wasn't much for makeup in the first place, but I definitely in high school was hitting that Clinique counter. Um, but I remember even in my 20s, I did a whole 9 months of no shampoo. You know, people have thought I've been a little bit crazy along the way. And right now, even last night, my daughter was like, why are your legs greasy? And they're not greasy. I was like, I put lotion on. And my significant other was like, lotion? You did not use lotion. And I have my own beef tallow mixture.
Nice.
And that's my moisturizer. And before that was coconut oil, but this beef tallow has been great. And I throw in some natural essential oils and, you know, I, I don't, yeah, I want to, eliminate and keep away from as much as I can when it comes to, what I put in and on my body. And I think so much of that was inspired by my mom being diagnosed with breast cancer at such a young age. I'm 46 and she was 35 back then, but back then that was really unheard of. She's 70 this year, but and now you hear about 30-year-olds all the time being
Yep.
diagnosed with breast cancer and the like. And so I just kind of thought I'm going to do this whole prevention lifestyle. I watched her go through chemotherapy. I helped her comb her hair out. It wasn't good, it wasn't pleasant. And at 11 and 12, uh, I can look back and see where this fear of abandonment comes from, right? Going in and out of the hospital because of, I think, white blood cell count dropping. And we didn't know if she was coming home every other weekend.
Yep.
And so that was tough. And then I agree. I've been reading so much on divine masculinity and femininity, and you see this polarity that has been lost over the years.
Yep.
With the advantages of feminism, there's been probably equally as many disadvantages that have come along with that. The breakdown of the nuclear home, and that's a whole another conversation. But if you're energetically carrying masculine energy around to go, 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 do, and productivity, you really don't have time to like step into that feminine energy and that flow.
Right. And I mean, what kids need most is a parent to be around and hold space for them and to slow down and like get on their level, basically be on the same brain wavelength as them. And kids are not worried about deadlines and jobs and phone calls and, oh, I got to make my 9 o'clock meeting. Like, oh, got to hurry up. Kids are just like timeless. They literally have no sense of time and structure. So I think every person can pretty much agree that kids do best with parents who are present. And unfortunately, because of the economy and a bunch of other reasons, some because of feminism and materialism, a lot of times the priority is more of getting the house or the car or the job rather than how do we live um, a life that's maybe more rural or a little less extravagant so that we can prioritize being present with our children. And I think there's starting to be a switch back to that because millennials oftentimes had parents who were very go, go, go and not as present. So like we're starting to get off our phones, start to being with the kids more and change all those things. But yeah, the makeup too is definitely a big thing. Like you said, going to, the pharmacy or going to Clinique and getting all those things that look really good but are not really healthy is helpful. Um, the companies that I know we recommend a lot are ones like Primarily Pure. There's Araza, Araza, 100% pure, has really good shampoo and products like that. A lot of like shampoo and conditioner and tallow you can actually learn to make yourself, but tallow is a great moisturizer. We use one by a Honeybee Hippie, but there's so many different great tallows. Even if you go to like your local farmer's market, there's typically a lot of up and coming options out there now, which is great. So I'm really happy about all those things. And I wanted to mention before I forgot that there's an aspect because 20% of women do develop PCOS in America. Debatable like 10 to 20%, but I think it might even be higher who are undiagnosed, kind of like endometriosis. There's a lot of people who are undiagnosed, and you can actually get endometriosis tissue anywhere in your body. There's people who have had endometriosis in their brain and it's causing migraines. People who
Mhm.
have it in their heart and it's causing heart palpitations, or in their lungs and it's causing a cough. So you can actually develop that. And on an existential level, to me, what PCOS and endometriosis is, it's like an overgrowth of femininity. It's actually your body like saying, I need more uterus energy. I need more ovary energy. I need more feminine energy. So it's almost like your body's trying to fight the excess hormone disruptors and testosterone by saying, like, let's just produce more ovary. Let's produce
Mhm.
more uterine tissue. So it's like your body's screaming to be more feminine, but it's not getting it. But there is an element that doesn't relate to any of that, which is just that a lot of times too many antibiotics or too much standard American diet and processed food will create an overgrowth of yeast in the gut. And that candida overgrowth, if it doesn't come from mold in the house and it comes from excess sugar or processed foods, refined carbohydrates, fast food, junk food, or too many antibiotics, that overgrowth of yeast will create endometriosis or PCOS as well. Chinese medicine has known this for thousands of years, that yeast is basically what they would call dampness that then turns into mucus or phlegm. And that phlegm creates stagnation and growth of things like fibroids, cysts, and extra endometrial tissue. So it's not just a modern disease. These have been around for a long, long time. But if you do have yeast overgrowth in the gut, that can definitely either perpetuate or cause some of these things as well. I've had a lot of endometriosis and PCOS like warriors. There's people who literally become like endometrial warriors or PCOS warriors, and their whole purpose is basically like helping educate people to reduce symptoms and help them with PCOS, and teaching them some science-based things like taking myo-inositol, vitamin B8, which is great for balancing hormones. Very low risk, can even help sleep. But the problem is they don't know how to cure or remove PCOS and endometriosis, because the modern medical model says that it's incurable. It's something you have and you have to manage it. But there's research that shows that turmeric in high doses on an empty stomach will actually dissolve endometrial plaques. So it's like the body does have the capacity to heal if you just remove inflammation in the gut and the lower abdomen. If you remove some of the yeast overgrowth, if you help the liver process sugar and insulin better, um, and if you treat yeast overgrowth, and if you do some like different proteolytic enzymes and high dose turmeric and things like that, I've seen PCOS disappear. I've seen it completely regulate on blood work within a year or two. I've seen endometriosis completely dissolve and go away without medical intervention, traditional medical intervention or surgery. Even when it's super late stage and they were like a week from operating, you just do like a really strict anti-yeast diet, do some antifungals, do some proteolytic enzymes, and people avoid surgery and completely heal. So it is possible, but with the conventional medical model, we don't really learn how to induce a healing response. Acupuncture, chiropractic, the hands-on massage you mentioned, those are all how to induce healing. We're pretty much told that the body is dysfunctional and wrong and needs to be cut out, or something needs to be blocked or numbed or stopped. But if we learn that the body is a self-healing, innately intelligent mechanism that can correct itself, a lot of these conditions go from incurable diseases that you're going to have forever to potentially something that could reverse with some gentle, light support and good lifestyle change.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big believer that the body has the ability to heal.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but I know it takes effort, and a lot of people today, they want that quick fix. And they want, you know, they want to feel better fast. Um, and, you know, I'm going to take the harder road, I guess. But like I've always been, you know, the square peg
Yeah.
trying to fit in a round hole.
Yep.
And, you know, but it's definitely empowering when and it's definitely empowering when you realize that you actually have the power to create this type of healing within your own body, I think.
It's super empowering. And I don't think it's inappropriate to want a quick fix or to want support. But it's like same thing. It's like turning off the check engine light. It's like that's okay. You got to keep driving. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to keep going. But remember that you might want to do some of those underlying things because it's worth it. And if you think about it as being really difficult and all the things you have to change, that's probably going to stop you from ever getting started. So if you just think about like 3 things you could do that you might be able to start doing that would improve your health, and 3 things that you could stop doing that would improve your health, and just pick one of those 6 and just start with that. Think about like when you could start it, what's realistic, what's practical for you, and just put in your calendar, schedule it, write it down, put a sticky note on your mirror, and just start with one of those things. That's super, it's a great way to start if you're ever like not sure what to do. And over time, your ego will want to improve, get healthier, be better, be smarter, be sexier, be more attractive, lose weight, get stronger, whatever it is. So those other 5 things and those 3 that you can add and 3 you can remove, your brain's going to want to do those too eventually. So you'll get there over time. It doesn't have to all happen all at once. Some people who are really suffering and have a lot going on, they need to make massive change right now. But for most people, they're doing pretty well. So if they just think of a couple of things they can add in and remove, they'll get there even subconsciously just by telling themselves like, hey, I'll get this eventually. What do I want to do first?
Yeah. So you also mentioned the thyroid. And I recently read that many thyroid conditions go undiagnosed. And that I want to say, I think it was Aviva Jill Rom. I followed her for a while. 5 out of 8 women, maybe. And
Wow.
I don't know if she said people, but essentially have some sort of like thyroid insufficiency, let's say. And that, but those are just, those are not ones that have been diagnosed. She's guessing, right? That,
Right.
and I don't know if that's correct. But I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do know, that is one thing in the last 3 years that they suggested I had. And I was just in and out, kind of learning more about functional medicine and having new labs drawn. Well, one lady, the edges of my tongue are kind of jagged.
Hmm.
And, as you can see, like I'm losing the outside third of my eyebrow.
Yep.
And that is a sign of, something with thyroid. They did say potentially hypothyroid. I'm going to go on Thursday to have new labs drawn, but because I haven't done anything with it, I've done some iodine and selenium, and I know even that can be controversial, right? There are ways, and then change in diet, all the things. Like I'm doing all the things
Yep.
and have been, but and that could be all of course stress related in and of itself, right? Raising 2 kids
Yep.
and living in this world, and running my own business, even though partnered, I still uh, am essentially a single mom, right? I mean, they're not his kids. So I'm still like pulling the weight. And then, so it's and running, a small business, right? So I am in that masculine energy,
Yep.
probably more often than I really want to be, which is, a challenge in and of itself. Having to be this go, go, go when I don't necessarily. So, the thyroid thing was new for me. Do you see that one a lot? And then you said adrenal fatigue also.
I do. Yeah. Majority of my patients are not in the optimal ranges for adrenal health with their DHEAS, cortisol, and testosterone, men and women. But thyroid issues tend to hit women first, and adrenal low testosterone tends to hit men first. So some people say 5 to 10 times more women struggle with thyroid issues than men. A lot of research says 10 to 20% of women at some point in their lifetime will get diagnosed with a thyroid condition. But as far as subclinical, you're right, it's probably half or more. I would say that 5 out of 8 women is pretty accurate. And I'd almost say like 2 out of 8, so 7 out of 8, either have low or hyperthyroid. See a good bit of hyperthyroid as well. And the best thing you can do for your thyroid is to regulate your cortisol levels. So regulating sleep, regulating getting proper light in mornings, sunrise and sunset, getting outside as much as possible. Regulating stress levels is probably the #1 thing to do. But we see it a lot, and it typically hits around kids being 10 to 18 years old, because that's about the time the body goes into a fatigue state from having to parent and raise kids in a very busy modern world. So it's quite common, happens all the time. It can cause postpartum depression and anxiety. I'll see that quite often, that hormone depletion causes that postpartum depression and anxiety. And some people will do placental encapsulations, and as soon as they take that, that ends the postpartum issues. Doesn't work for about 10% of people. Some people does 10% does nothing, but like 80% of people do better with that. And it's because we're just generally hormonally depleted. There's like the sign like America runs on Dunkin' because we need the caffeine to perk ourselves up. Caffeine will actually reduce thyroid hormone function by 30 to 50%. So you have to be careful if you're on thyroid medication to separate it from the caffeine. But even if you're not on a thyroid medication, caffeine daily use over time will also deplete the thyroid and adrenal glands. And the average American is caffeinated every day. There are a lot of drugs, run around, just acting like it's normal. And back in the day, caffeine was meant to be a spiritual practice where you would basically caffeinate yourself and then meditate or pray or connect to God and source. So it wasn't meant to get you through the workday, or it was in the Industrial Revolution basically given to employees for cheap or for free so that they could keep working, and it increased labor output. So it was basically given to everybody and marketed to be a daily consumption type of thing, not because it's good for us, but because it helps the economy.
So some of those studies out there that show it is beneficial for the brain, would that be in smaller doses? I know, yeah, getting off of caffeine is my goal for this year. Because
Right.
you're right, I'm walking around drugged every day, and if I don't have it, which I'm sure is playing a huge, taking a huge toll on my.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah, I think not having it every day, or just not depending or needing it every day, is a goal for people, I think. And it's one thing if you're very calm and relaxed, and like you said, you're not sort of in that go-go lifestyle. Some Europeans who have caffeine, their caffeine is much lower in the espressos they have over there. It might be like 20, 30 milligrams in an espresso versus 200, 300 milligrams, 10 times as much in like a Starbucks venti drink. So we have to be careful of the quantity of caffeine. So that's why some people are like, I can have an espresso in Italy and fall asleep. And I go to America, I have a Starbucks light roast with 5 times as much caffeine, and I can't sleep all night. You can't have anything caffeine after noon, kind of thing. It does take 24 to 48 hours for it to get out of your system. On my Instagram, there's a bunch of story highlights on how to get yourself off of caffeine. Oftentimes going to half calf or to green tea or black tea is more helpful than caffeine from coffee because it's less stimulating. But it is important to try to reduce it if possible. Don't have it right when you wake up. Wait an hour or two. Try to eat before you have caffeine. That's helpful as well. But I'm starting to forget the original question because caffeine.
I just, I think it was Perlmutter, Dr. Perlmutter,
Oh, the
posted
benefits.
something the other day about, does it, those who have coffee every day, less risk for Alzheimer's, and
Yep.
yeah, you're always reading something. There's so much, confusing information out there for the consumer. It's hard to know
It is hard to know.
what is right.
And it increases your thyroid function temporarily, and it's kind of like natural adrenaline. It increases your thyroid and adrenal function temporarily. It's sort of like a crutch for your thyroid and adrenals, but then later on in the day, you end up kind of tired or burn out in the afternoon. You get tired much earlier around dinner time, so it can create circadian rhythm issues. Matthew, what's his name? I think it's Matthew Walker, is the world's leading sleep expert. Yep, Berkeley psychology sleep expert. And he's been on record saying on podcast that because caffeine takes 24 to 40 hours to get out of your system, it'll decrease some of your REM sleep and the quality of sleep the next night. So people who actually, I'll say it's different in America and Europe, but people in America who have, let's say, 100 milligrams or more of caffeine every day, they actually age 10 to 15 years faster. Their brains age faster than someone who doesn't have caffeine. And so there's a lot of nuance in the research because some of this is correlative versus causation in the research. So looking at people who have caffeine versus people who don't have caffeine. And some cultures, a lot of like alcohol, this research is confusing as well, because in some cultures, alcohol and caffeine use are so common that the vast majority of people who abstain do so because they're so unhealthy that they can't even have alcohol, or they're on certain medications that they can't have alcohol. So in some cultures, to not have alcohol means that you are not healthy. In other cultures, it's the healthier people who are abstaining. So you have to kind of be careful of the reason why people are imbibing or not of different substances. But caffeine for most Americans is usually coming from coffee. And the coffee bean and drink of coffee for most Americans is the number one source of antioxidants that they get in their daily food life. Because most people don't even have 1 or 2 servings of fruits or vegetables a day. So they're having meat and potatoes and processed food and junk food and fast food. So they're getting so much inflammation that if you actually took coffee away from somebody who doesn't have a healthy diet, that might be very harmful. But if you're getting 3, 4, even like the recommended 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, you're having healthy meat and pasture raised eggs and more fresh food and good quality source stuff, then you don't necessarily need those antioxidants from coffee. So for some people, the coffee is beneficial because it helps them poop and it pushes out all that bad food and toxic sludge that they're eating day to day. So I'd say for the average American, coffee might be essential just so they get more antioxidants in. But once you start to improve your overall diet and lifestyle and eat the way our ancestors did, you don't really need it to poop. You don't need it to energize. You don't need it for antioxidant status. And if you really did like coffee, you would have it without cream, without sugar, and you'd have the decaf version and be like, have decaf black coffee or espresso and be like, this is delicious. Very, very few people will love a decaf coffee or espresso because they're just, for the most part, going for the caffeine, not the coffee. And that's what they start to crave, is they crave the combination of sugar, fat, and caffeine. And so they're like, death before decaf. I've seen t-shirts and signs like death before decaf because there's really
Yeah.
no point if it's decaf for many people.
Yeah, I know, that's funny. My friend, she says the coffee, it's really the creamer that she doesn't want to get rid of.
For sure. Yeah. Some of the creamers are loaded up with either sugars or artificial sweeteners, which is not great, but you can, if you're going to do cream and sweetener, it's probably better to do like either something like the Laird, Laird, the
Oh, yeah.
creamers,
Mhm.
Califia, some that have like almost no sugar or that are coconut based, or if you need to do like raw unpasteurized dairy, if you can get that legally in your state or country, you can do some raw cream or raw goat's cream or something like that. In
Yeah, that's
coffee.
what we have we have a couple, we get it across the way for our pets
Yep.
and over in Indiana. And then they have there's a pretty quality product here in a glass jar that's low temp, pasteurized, and non-homogenized. So, we will do that too with a little bit of honey typically. And I don't have any sweetener in my coffee, but I do like that cream for sure. Uh,
Nice. Yeah, I
but
like that people are craving the sweet. Just eat the sweet. Like just eat honey, raw local honey. Eat that straight, or like take a little teaspoon of maple syrup and eat it straight. When we start mixing sugar in with drinks and baked goods, is when it starts to be too overconsumed. Or just like eat all the fruit, if your body's craving it, because typically you can only have like a teaspoon or two of honey. Your body's probably going to stop you. But if
right.
you put it into your tea or coffee, then it's way too easy to just overdo it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I can see that entirely because you're right. Certain things you're only going to be able to have so much of that honey or maple syrup in a spoon.
Right. Yep.
So much of this is about balancing hormones,
Yeah.
essentially, right?
Yep.
Or in order to get pregnant. And it's going to be lifestyle choices, balancing the hormones, stress reduction. What
Hmm.
else? I mean, detox, opening up the detox pathways.
Detox pathways can be very helpful. Making sure you can sweat on a regular basis, making sure your bowel movements are moving every day or almost every day, making sure like your urine, unless you're taking B vitamins or something that colors it, is pretty clear. So like hydrating well, pooping well, sleeping well, getting outside, moving your body, sweating on a fairly regular basis is all very, very helpful for hormones. Um, and just getting good nutrients in. I wouldn't want to forget the methylation factors that you said, the MTHFR variants. Testing yourself for that or taking some methylated B vitamins can be very, very beneficial for people, because the MTHFR can predispose you to hormone issues, detoxification issues, all sorts of mental health conditions. So some people start taking methylated B vitamins and it's like someone turned the light switch back on again. It's that beneficial. And iodine deficiency. I know you said you were taking iodine, but most of us don't get any iodine from the soil, and the foods used to have more iodine in the soil. That's not the case as much anymore. And we mostly get iodine from seaweed and seafood. Iodized salt is not really that well absorbed, and iodized salt is bleached, so it's not that healthy.
Mm.
So we really either want to supplement with a couple hundred micrograms of iodine a day, or once in a while take a few milligrams of it, or make sure we're getting more seaweed or seafood that has higher iodine sources on a regular basis. And you can test your iodine in blood work, or there's a lab called Hakala, Hakala, Hakala Labs, where you can order an iodine urine test, which is actually the best way to even test your iodine to see what your levels are at, because iodine is also great for breast health and reducing or removing different fibrocystic or dense breast tissue. We've been told that dense breast tissue is normal. And as you know, because of underwires, because of breast compression, they don't move as much as they're supposed to. And then things stagnate, the fluid stagnates, and we get more dense breasts, fibrocystic breasts, or other lymphatic growths that turn into things we don't want. And magnesium, B vitamins, and iodine are great for breast health. Massaging in some frankincense essential oil is also great for breast health and breaking up different adhesions in the breasts. But it's really important to reduce caffeine as well for fibrocystic breasts. A lot of people with breast tenderness or fibrocystic breast or dense breast tissue, when they start doing some iodine, some will even do like some frankincense oil with like a drop of iosol, I-O-S-O-L, iosol, some frankincense oil, some coconut oil, or like tallow or some kind of carrier oil, massaging into the breast every day, reducing caffeine intake, making sure they get enough magnesium, and that'll typically improve in just a couple days for most people.
Oh, wow.
Breast
I wonder,
yeah, that's the
uh,
breakout.
would that be beneficial potentially for like rubbing on the abdomen and uterus as well? If you have something like endometriosis or uterine fibroids or polyps or cysts?
It's more specific to breast tissue, but castor oil packs are great. There's other essential oils that are more specific to like uterus tissue. Clary sage is one really good one, but like a castor oil pack with a little clary sage essential oil could be great for uterus health. You can do castor oil packs over breast tissue or over the liver, the upper right quadrant of your abdomen, or like the lower right ribs, underneath the right breast, basically, all the way down to the end of the ribs. That can be helpful for liver support as well, because castor oil packs will help increase heat, temperature, blood flow, and support lymphatic flow as well in those tissues.
So I have a couple questions. They might sound sort of off the wall. One is about when looking at like testosterone levels in men. I
Yeah.
have read that you have the free testosterone as well. Can you sort of define or share how they are different and why it matters that both are, I guess, right, optimal?
Right. So for men, depends on the lab range, but free testosterone levels in nanograms per deciliter you typically want to be at least 10, if not up to 50 or higher. Testosterone levels are typically measured in nanograms per deciliter as well, and you want them to be probably, depending on your age, at least 3 to 500, if not over 500 for young men. Even closer to like 800 to 1200 can be normal for someone under 30. But testosterone levels are declining so regularly that oftentimes, unless it's below 200 or 300, most doctors aren't going to say anything. But you want to really be over 400, 500 for everybody of every age for males. But free testosterone is basically how much testosterone your body is really currently using. And sex hormone binding globulin is a compound in your blood that'll bind up the testosterone and lower your free testosterone. So it means you can have a normal testosterone level, but if you have, you can test for SHBG or free testosterone. And if your SHBG is high or your free testosterone is low, it means that your body's not really using it efficiently or effectively. So you can have totally normal testosterone levels, but nothing's happening. It's just sort of sitting there like you got a bunch of testosterone, but they're all lazy bums sitting in their couch in their parents' basement at 35 without a job, not getting any work done.
That's right.
So you really just want to test SHBG with total testosterone with free testosterone to see if it's really working. Similar to like a thyroid panel where people just test TSH without testing the T3, T4, or free T3, free T4, or reverse T3. It's another way to just look a little bit more in depth at what's going on. The biggest thing I find that impacts the free testosterone in my patients is sleep quality and duration. So when men start sleeping less than 7 hours a night, they might have pretty good testosterone, but their free testosterone levels decline. There's a lot of men in that early erectile dysfunction, low libido stage, where when they get 9 hours of sleep, they're really horny and ready to go and randy. And when they get 6 hours of sleep, they don't really feel like they're in the mood. Same thing happens with women too. Women also have testosterone levels that should be a little higher than they are these days, but sleep is always, always number one. And then number two is alcohol consumption, where the more alcohol you have, the less your free testosterone becomes. Number three, for me, the next biggest one is always going to be stress. So it's basically related to sleep, alcohol, and stress. When stress is really high, your sex hormone binding globulin goes up and it basically inactivates your testosterone. So stress is a big, big factor for that. And then the fastest way to get up besides those things is going to be exercise. So weightlifting, squatting, heavy lifting of sorts is the next best way to up it.
Now, what about, I know with the legalization of marijuana, it's been a while. Did you find that, I know you mentioned alcohol, I mean, well, I mean, for men or women,
Yeah.
I guess intuitively, I think anything, as you said, even with the caffeine we're using every single day is not a cure.
Yep. Yeah, the marijuana is definitely not great for most people. I mean, 66% of the population has used marijuana at some point. More than 1 in 4, about 27% of people use marijuana on a daily basis or regular basis. And there are different studies that show even like one joint can lower testosterone levels for at least a day or more. A lot of times, there are some studies showing it doesn't impact testosterone and some studies showing it does. It depends a lot on like the subtype of all the other lifestyle factors those people are doing. But most practitioners, clinicians I know find that occasional use is not very harmful, but that daily, regular use or multiple times a day, especially, is when you start to really see low adrenal function, low testosterone, fertility issues with marijuana. It's just really not good for hormones and definitely not good for the brain with chronic use as well. I know there's Dr. Perlmutter and others, but I always say if you're not testing, you're guessing. And the number one brain tester on the planet is probably Dr. Amen, A-M-E-N,
Yeah.
Amen. And he shows chronic marijuana users having reduced blood flow and brain mass. So he basically like shrinks your brain in the same way that alcohol use does over time for alcoholics. So it's generally just not great for your cognitive function. In Chinese medicine, we've known for 1,000 years that chronic marijuana use will cool the liver permanently. So it warms the stomach so it can increase appetite, help you get more, like cravings while you're high. But the liver is responsible for short-term memory, which is why there's that old stereotype of pot smokers who kind of are like a little bit slow or foggy, or like their memory isn't so good, they're a little spacey. Because if you are overdoing it for too long, that change in the brain, as Dr. Amen has now shown in modern times, can become permanent. So marijuana can help slow down and make a type A person to be a little bit more type B. It can help with creativity. A lot of musicians and artists use it for various purposes, though I think it's sort of like like any plant medicine or a lot of these recreational drugs, they kind of like unlock levels of consciousness. They unlock different doors, or they help your brain rewire. And they do all serve a purpose. And for many people, they've saved their lives or they have great utility. But you just have to be careful to use them with a purpose, to not abuse them, and to do our best to not be reliant on them if possible.
Mhm. So, I know that we've been talking for a while. Are there any things, I know, and you will see people and help them with fertility issues. I know as a massage therapist, I have people coming in who are in their early 30s who've had to, you know, use things such as IVF.
Mhm.
And uh, it seems earlier and earlier that people are having to look for other ways to, get pregnant. You will help people do that. They can do that. Can they do that virtually? I mean, can you send off if people want to work with you?
They can. I have like an online membership they can join now. If they go to Dr. Bradley Campbell, drbradleycampbell.com, they can find the link to the membership there. Um, so there's that option. But for the most part, yeah, there's my practice is currently full, though we're hiring another doctor to take on one-on-ones. But people can ask questions of the membership and run lab tests and hormone tests there. And then I'm working on training more practitioners after this doctor to um, make there more options for people out there. For now, they can kind of look up different functional medicine providers or naturopathic doctors, or even some hormone specialist doctors. They can go to ifm.org to look up functional medicine practitioners too.
Who are helping people maybe balance hormones with fertility through a more natural lens, functional medicine lens.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds good. But otherwise, they can find you at drbradleycampbell.com, and you have a membership. And then the membership includes information.
There's information. They can ask me a question every month. And there's also access to lab testing, some different health protocols as well.
Okay. So, and then those labs can be done anywhere, right? They go to their like any lab test now after they get the order from you? Is that how that works?
Some of them are any lab test now or LabCorp. Some are ones you can do at home, which is ideal for people. I think if they're in New York, New Jersey, or Rhode Island, it's not allowed. They have to basically like ship it to a friend or a PO box in another state, and then sometimes they'll do it that way. They'll get it from someone else, but there's a few states that are a little bit weird about their legislation.
Okay, well, I know you have all kinds of great information. I've been following you since COVID, and I think that's when I originally found you. Your messages were great and inspiring, always in the car, educating, and that's what I love. You're educating people on how to, take their power back, really, essentially, right? That we are sovereign beings, and our body has the ability to heal itself, and when we treat it as the temple it is.
Good things happen.
Yes. Yes.
Miracles happen.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, definitely the people I see, right? And sometimes I wonder though, yeah, I know you and I see this stuff, right, in our algorithm.
Yep.
But you wonder, like, I mean, like if I go to the swimming pool, the people getting out the spray sunscreen, I'm like, they must not be getting what I get in my feed.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's just so weird, I guess, for me. And like I just don't understand it entirely. Because it seems like there's so much research out there today. They either just don't believe it, or they're just not getting it because
Yeah.
they never see it. And that's what I wonder is like, how do we see? And we may never know, but I could, just going to the pool, just breathing in everybody else's sunscreen. I'm like,
Totally. Yeah. I feel like just takes people like me and you just spreading the word and having a lot of these conversations in person from a place of curiosity and compassion. There's a lot of people who want to go out and just like preach everything, like, you know how toxic that is. But if you're like, hey, did you look at the ingredients? They're like, what do you mean? Oh, do you know that got pulled off the market last year? What do you mean? Like, that's
yeah.
all it takes. Just a couple questions to kind of like make them go do a little research and they'll find it. It's just baby steps sometimes for people.
Yeah, I know that's what it was for me. I was in a like a mother-child group, and I was vegetarian and vegan. Like I thought I was doing all the things when I was
Mm.
in my early 20s. And this one mom said, "Do you know what's in Jif?" No. Partially hydrogenated oils. And that was the last time I bought a container of Jif because she educated me, but it really was more that question, do you know what's in that peanut butter? And I had no idea.
Yep. And you're like, oh, there it is.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to see your face. Congratulations on finding the one.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure talking.
Yeah, likewise. Hopefully, maybe I'll meet you in person one day.
Yeah, close enough for sure.
Yeah, you are not too far. All right, I appreciate it. Be sure to check out Dr. Bradley Campbell online on Instagram. Same thing, right? Dr. Bradley Campbell.
Yep. Perfect.
All right, great. Thanks again. Thanks again.
You're welcome. See ya.
Bye.